It's a great pleasure to welcome so many of you here today. Representatives from more than 60 countries, ministers, ambassadors, leaders from business and civil society, and all of us together united with one aim, and that is to support Afghanistan in building a secure, stable and prosperous future for all of her people. And it's great to be standing here with President Ghani, who will be speaking a little later on, and also to be seeing Chief Executive Abdullah, who I'll be talking to later this afternoon. This year has seen the first democratic transfer of power in Afghanistan's history. You've both put partnership ahead of personal ambition to fulfill the hopes of millions of Afghans who courageously went out and voted in April and June. Now, of course, the road ahead will not be easy. I know a little bit about what it's like working in coalition, and I certainly know how hard it is taking difficult decisions in the long-term national interest. But we're all here today to support you in building a new future for your country. I believe it's a great moment of opportunity for Afghanistan, and I think there are three key challenges in seizing it and in securing the future prosperity of this nation for all its people. First, maintaining security. Second, developing strong and accountable institutions. And third, building an inclusive society. Let me say a brief word about each. Many of the countries represented at this conference have made huge sacrifices to get to where we are today, and none more than Afghanistan and its people. In Britain, we will never forget the incredible bravery of the 453 servicemen and women who gave their lives fighting for our freedoms in Afghanistan. Nor will we forget the many civilians who continue to risk their lives today, as we saw tragically with the suicide attack last week. But the progress that's been made is remarkable. When Al-Qaeda attacked the Twin Towers in 2001, they planned that attack from Afghanistan, operating freely under the Taliban regime. Today, international forces have driven Al-Qaeda out, and we've built up and trained the Afghan forces so that the Afghans themselves can take control of their own security. When I first went to Afghanistan, there was just one Afghan army brigade in Helmand. Today, there are 4. The integration of army, police, and border police is strong and improving. Across the country, there are more than 330,000 Afghan troops and police providing security across the country. And as I've seen for myself, these are capable, determined forces which impressively faced down the Taliban during the last summer and secured 2 rounds of elections so that people across Afghanistan could have a say over the future of their country. It is this growing capability that has allowed international forces to draw down. But let me be clear, while many of our troops have gone home, we will not be walking away. In Britain, we are delivering the National Army Officer Academy, what we sometimes call Sandhurst in the Sand, which will be a world-leading program to develop the future leaders of the Afghan security forces. And the wider international community, with Britain, is contributing financially to the ongoing development of the Afghan national security forces. Because this is not just vital for the future security of Afghanistan, it is vital for the security of us all. Now, second, just as you need security for businesses to invest, for the economy to grow, so you also need strong and accountable institutions. There was a great session at this conference yesterday on private sector investment. Britain is committed to playing a leading role in helping to grow Afghan business. For instance, we're supporting investment in Afghanistan's extractives industry to help unleash the huge potential of the country's natural resources. But one of the big messages that came out of that session with the private sector was the critical importance of strong and accountable institutions. Why? Because if businesses are going to invest in a country, they need to know there are rules in that country that they can trust, that they aren't suddenly going to have their premises taken away, that they can get redress from a genuine rule of law, and that there is a fair judiciary where judges are honest and governments can be defeated in the courts because they don't control those courts. It's no accident that the most successful countries in the world are those with the absence of corruption and the presence of strong and accountable institutions. Open, transparent and accountable government, free and fair elections, the rule of law, a fair judiciary, access to markets, a free press able to expose corruption without fear of reprisal. Together, these key enablers of growth make up what I call the golden thread that runs through stories of successful development right across the world. And they are quite simply life-changing. Curbing corruption means not having to pay a bribe to lease a plot of land. Transparency means that people can monitor whether revenue from natural resources is being invested in the roads and the wells that they need, or whether it's being siphoned off and wasted. The rule of law means that a woman can go to court to settle a dispute knowing that her evidence will be given the same weight as a man's. Accountable government means a government that asks what it can do for the country in the service of its people, not what it can do for itself in spite of the people it was supposed to serve. These building blocks of democracy are fundamental to the prosperity we all want to see. So I strongly welcome the steps that President Ghani has set out here in London on reform and renewed partnership, as well as the measures that he's already taken to reopen the Kabul bank fraud case and to set out proposals for reforming a key number of institutions. It's absolutely vital, and I know you will do this, to see these reforms through. The third key challenge, which builds on the reform of institutions, is the creation of an inclusive society. This isn't just something that is nice to have, it is fundamental to a nation's security and prosperity. If you want people to share a sense of responsibility for their country's future, they need to have a stake in that society. We've seen an inspiring civil society event at this conference, which has showcased so much of the potential of Afghan society. But it's also highlighted many of the key challenges, including the role of women and girls, including the representation of people from all backgrounds, and the task of building an Afghanistan in which everyone has a stake. And we must be very clear. This is absolutely not about people having to make some sort of false choice between saying Pashtun or Afghan. It's about being proud to be both. One of the most exciting things I've seen in recent months is the UK Afghan football project we launched with the English FA and the Premier League last Christmas. The Afghan Football Federation are now setting up under-14 football leagues across 8 different provinces, with further leagues for girls on the way too. Football brings people together, and I look forward to the day when England can play them in a World Cup. Not just the men, but the women's teams too. Because empowerment of women, this is the last major point I want to make, empowerment of women is vital in unlocking a country's economic potential. Studies in Africa show that limited education and employment opportunities for women mean annual per capita growth is almost a whole percentage point lower than it could be. Had this growth been achieved, Africa's economies would be twice the size now that they otherwise have been over the last 30 years. When women have opportunity, resources, and a voice, the benefits cascade to her children, her community, her country. Providing girls with just 1 extra year of schooling can increase their wages by as much as 20%. While a World Bank study of 100 countries found that the greater the representation of women in parliament, the lower the level of corruption. So I welcome the steps that President Ghani and Chief Executive Abdullah are taking to give women and girls a voice, including the commitment to appoint 4 women ministers and the first women to the Supreme Court. And I encourage you to be bold in continuing to build the most inclusive society possible. Now, Afghanistan has come a long way in the last 10 years. A decade ago, it would have been hard to imagine an Afghanistan in which 6.7 million children are attending school, including 2.5 million girls. It'd be hard to imagine an Afghanistan in which 6 times as many people have access to health services and in which maternal mortality has fallen by 60% since 2001. An Afghanistan with new roads, new irrigation, new training opportunities, and where the shops are full and civil society is starting to thrive. So just think about what could be achieved in the next 10 years. As one young Afghan citizen posted on Facebook in response to the My Afghanistan, My Future campaign, they said this: "There is a sense of hope in the air. You'll see the Afghan youth dedicating their lives to improving their country. Generational change, by definition, takes time, but it is on the horizon." To that young man, and to President Ghani, to Chief Executive Abdullah, and to all Afghans who share that sense of hope and optimism. Our message today is simple. We will be with you every step of the way. Thank you very much for listening.